Hey everyone, it's David from mdbootstrap.com. In this video, you're gonna learn everything about cookies. As you know, cookies is one of the options to store data in a browser, among the others. If you want to check other options like local storage, don't forget to check our other videos. Now, without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so as you probably know, cookies are one of the ways to store data on your website. Imagine that you are entering a certain website like google.com for the very first time and you want to choose the language, for example, English. So in order to make sure that the browser will remember your option, we're gonna use cookies. Google gonna use cookies. How we can see what kind of cookies they are? If you click on the small icon next to the address bar in the Google Chrome, you can see cookies and you can see that there are already 26 in use. So these are all different cookies. If you navigate to some other page, you may notice that some of the cookies might comes from other websites. This is so-called third-party cookies, but we're not going to focus on that because these third-party cookies will be gone by the end of 2023 or early 2024, and mostly they are used for marketing purposes so that pages, companies like Google or Facebook could track you and your activity on other pages. We're going to focus on the cookies which are coming from our website. Okay, so we know that we can check cookies by clicking on this icon, but we can also do it with use of JS. In order to do it, we can just simply search for document.cookies and we will see all cookies which are stored within the page. We can see that there are a couple of them here. So the first is consent, and then the next one starts here with OTZ. They are all divided by semicolon. Now let's jump into the code and learn how to handle cookies with use of JavaScript. Now, before we move on, I want to remind you, as always, that you can't only watch this tutorial. You have to also do it by yourself. Don't go into the mode when you just watch another tutorial, because otherwise you're not gonna learn anything. So I strongly encourage you to follow me, stop video at any moment, and just try to do it yourself. So let's create a new file. I'm gonna call it index.html, and I'm gonna use emmet to start with the basic setup of the code, and then I don't need this anymore, and I can increase the font a little bit, and I can also move it a little bit to the left. Now let's open this in our browser. So I'm gonna go to localhost 5500, and this is how we can see our empty web page so far. Okay, so now you know how to check your script using a web browser. However, now I'm going to teach you how to check it using JavaScript. So within our script tag, let's do a console log and then write document.cookie. This will show all our cookies. As you can see here, this is the empty list because we don't have any cookies. And if you go here, we'll see that there are no cookies over there. This is some default one, which you can see it's empty. There is no name, no content. So how we can add cookie? This is also fairly simple. What we have to do, we simply assign a value to document.cookie equals, and then now we have to remember how the cookie is built. So it's always key equals value per. Right, we already seen it back when we checked the Google cookies, so something like this. And let's see now. So I refreshed the page for the very first time right now. So first there were no cookies. Now we added it. So if I refresh the page, now we could see it over here. Now, one important thing to remember here. By default, if we don't specify the expiry date for the cookie, they will last as long as session, which means that as soon as we close our web browser, it should disappear. So let me show you how it works. I'm going to close the web browser now, and I'm going to open it again, open our live server. And as you can see, there is no cookie because first we do console log and only after that we add new one, right? So there were no cookies before. However, now if I refresh, obviously there will be one new cookie. There is one important thing though to remember here, because if we go to our settings, so I'm going to go to From Settings, and most probably you have this feature selected. So continue where you left off. If you have this feature selected, now even after closing our page and browser, let me remove this one just to make sure that we are not adding any cookie. If you come back here, your cookie will be still here. And this is because of the setting in the your web browser. So if you keep the settings here, the cookie will be lost, even though you closed the web browser. Okay, so now we know how to create and add our cookie. However, we also know that our cookie gonna disappear after the session is gone. So how to set up the expiry date to make sure that it's not gonna disappear, that it's gonna last. I'm gonna show you two ways. Actually, I'm gonna show you in this tutorial, I'm gonna show you a setup of functions which are gonna help you on your daily basis work. So I'm gonna create three functions for you. One, to create and set up the cookie with the expiry date and other options. Second, to get to read the cookie value. And third, to remove the cookie. These are the three most common functions which we're gonna use when it comes to web development. So when it comes to creating a cookie, I'm gonna show you two ways. So the first gonna show you just the mechanism, and secondly, I'm gonna create for you the function, which I strongly encourage you to use in your projects because it's just gonna simply speed up your development. So how to set up expiry? Let's start with date. So we need create date. Let date equals new date, and now we're gonna use date now, which is basically now, and we're gonna add some time to it, 6483. Now if you wonder what this E3 means, you can simply search in Google and you're gonna already tell you this is the number with extra zeros at the end. Okay, so this is our time. Now let's transform this date equals date to UTC string. Okay, so if you want to see how our date now looks like, we can check this out here. So this is actually 1 day from now. And now let's create cookie. So document cookie equals to, let's say user equals David, and expires equals, and now we're gonna add our date to it. So we can already see that there are two cookies over here, one key value which we created before, however still within the same session, and the new one over here. So let's check this out. So key, when we go to expires, it shows that it's gonna expire when the browsing session ends. And when it comes to user, we can see that it was created today, which is January 10th, and it's gonna expire tomorrow at the same time. Okay, now let's move to the function which I promised to use. So we're gonna create ourselves a function which we're gonna use in future projects. So let's do function set cookie. What do we need? We need a cookie name, we need cookie value, and we will need X days. So I assume we're gonna provide expiry in days. So when you think about it, whenever you create a sign-up form, you have this option like keep me logged in, and usually you want to keep a user logged in for a week or 2 weeks for the security reasons. So I think the days will be the most handy unit of time which we're gonna use. So let's set up expires. We're gonna put it to the empty string because sometimes you don't want to it's not obligatory to set it up, but however, if it exists, so if X days exist, then what we want to do is we want to set up a condition over here. So we'll have let date equals new date that you know already, and now date set time. Now the other option to get today's date is get time plus, we're gonna do some math here, also slightly different than last time. So X days multiplied by 24 hours multiplied by 60 minutes in every hour, multiplied by 60 seconds in every second, and multiplied by milliseconds. Okay, so this is how do we calculate our expiry. Okay, now let's do expires equals semicolon expires equals, and now we're gonna do date to UTC string. So again, something you already familiar with. Okay, now once we have that calculated, let's set up document.cookie, and this equals to name plus equals, we could use the string literals here, but just for the sake of clarity, I'm going to do it the old-fashioned way. And now we're going to set up the value. However, not directly. I'm going to use encode URI component function. So basically, what I'm doing here is I'm making sure that whatever is passed over here as a value, it actually matches the it has a proper encoding, because you can think of it, you can imagine some special characters being passed which are not allowed. So you can think about specific characters from different languages which are not accepted by the global standards. So we want to basically encode them before storing them in our cookie, just to make sure that everything works. Now, we're also going to do the conditions over here. So what does it mean is that if there is no value, we're going to put the empty string over there. Why is it this? It's basically because you don't always actually want to store a value. Why? Simply because you can treat your cookie as a Boolean. So if cookie exists, it means 1, it means true, and if it doesn't exist, it's basically mean false, right? So we don't always need a cookie, and we need the value from the cookie. We just need the cookie itself. So, and that's sufficient for our logic. That can be sufficient. And I'm also gonna add one thing here, so which we're gonna cover later on in this tutorial. So stay with me. I'm gonna put the path here, and I'm gonna explain it to you what it does and how does it work in a second. Okay, so our function is ready. Let's test it out. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna set cookie, and I'm gonna use, let's say, user2, because we already have user. No, it should be string, obviously, user2, and then we want to have John, and we want to set expiry for 7 days from now on. So let's see, we already see that there is the user John over here. Let's reopen this, refresh, cookie, 4 cookies. So there's a user2, and it's working like a charm. So our function is ready. Now, before we move on to the next subject, which will be how to get cookie, 2 more things. First of all, update cookie. So if you want to update, you basically do exactly the same what you've been doing while creating. So you actually do create cookie. So if I do this now with a new value, so let's say it's gonna be Mark, and refresh, you can see that user changed to Mark, right? So you basically just have to update the value of the certain cookie. Next thing is that except for the expires, you can also use something called maxAge. So maxAge is a parameter which is pretty similar to what we've done over here. So whereas the expiry setup or accept a specific date, right? So we have to calculate the date and give this, okay, so this is the 24th of Jan where we want this to expire. And maxAge accept values in seconds, and it will basically add to, it's gonna add it automatically to the date time right now. So for example, we can do something like this, document cookie equals to, and user3 equals to Dave, and now max age will equals to 3600. And if we check our cookies again now, we're gonna see that this will expire in an hour from now. So we basically added an hour. So you can also do that. However, this logic is also done here. It's up to you, whichever you want, whichever you prefer to use. Let's move to the next step, which will be get cookie. So we want to read a value of our cookie. So as I said, Again, I'm gonna provide you the function which I hope it's gonna be useful for you, so you can basically copy paste. Obviously, the whole code is gonna be down below in the description, so you can copy it and just start using it. So it's a simple way. Basically, all the I mean, the concept is simple. The way we do it may be a little bit complex, but it shouldn't bother you because you don't really need to understand the whole logic behind it. You need to understand what's going on. So because all the cookies, like you can see here, are stored in document.cookie, we just need to get them out of it. So I actually prepared the functions for you. So let me just copy paste it because I prepared it for you, and we'll just quickly go through it. So function get cookie, that will accept the name, and it's gonna search for this cookie with a given name in our cookies. So here we get all the cookies. We split them by semicolon. This is how we get this CA array over here. So let's do console log CA. And now let's get cookie user2. Right, so here we have all our cookies in this array, and then we are searching this array to basically provide the value. So we will be searching for the space and for the equal sign, and then we're going to calculate the length of the value, and we're going to return this specific string between the starting and end character, and that's gonna give us the value we are looking for, right? So get cookie console log, if we're gonna use it like this, and let's get rid of this, we'll have John from our cookie. Okay, so now you know how to create cookie, how to update cookie, and how to get cookie. A lot of cookies at the same time. So let's learn how to remove cookie. So the concept is very easy. In order to remove cookie, we just have to set its expiry date in a past. So let's quickly do it. Remove cookie. Okay, let's create a function, remove cookie, which will accept name, obviously, because we will remove by name. And now we just simply, like we would be adding new cookie, we're gonna add or set the cookie with the same name, probably. And then we're gonna add something like this, equals to empty, because the name doesn't really matter, path equals to this one. It has to be the same we set up over here. I'm gonna talk about it in a second, so bear with me. And then expires in, and let's pick up some date from past. So something like this, and let me scroll so you could see it. So we have a date in past, and let's test this function now. So here we list all the cookie. Let's remove cookie after that. So let's remove user3 Dave, sorry Dave for it, user3. And then let's check cookies again. So as you can see, user3 first, we are setting this up until the line 51, then we remove it, and in line number 53, this user3 is already gone. Okay, so we covered most important concepts. So I'm gonna do two more things in this tutorial for you. First of all, I'm gonna show you and explain you a more advanced option, which will be describing the path and the domain options, just so that you know how they work. And secondly, I'm gonna show you how to use this function, which we just created in the real life example, where we're gonna create some kind of message to the user, and we want to make sure that it's going to be showed only once, so that user is not going to be bothered every time he come back to our page again. Okay, so there are a few extra parameters which you can pass while creating the cookie. So the first will be path. This will basically specify where our cookie is available, right? So by default, we use this option, which is basically the same page which we are using, but you can specify, for example, a specific subpages, right? So the path is after our address. If we open page, so basically this would be something like mypage.com / and then docs, or maybe user, or maybe settings, and so on and so on, right? So this is how we can specify. So if we set up this path to docs, so our cookie will be available at docs, docs/webs, docs/web HTTP, and so on, but will not be available on docs/sets, some language, and so on. So this is path. Domain works pretty much the same. However, when it comes to domain, what we are talking about is not what comes after, but what comes before. So for example, you can have this specific language version, right? So for the France, you would have fr.mypage.com, right? So sometimes you want your cookie to be available only on mypage.com, and sometimes you want to be also available on all sub pages. If we go to google.com, you can see it here. So this will be available at Google and playgoogle.com, right? So all the this subdomain, they both can access the same cookie. So for domain, there are a couple of examples over here. So if we don't set cookie, it will be available like this one, right? So we just set cookie and value. We don't specify the domain. So it will be available only at this sub.example.com, because we are talking about, this is our example, sub.example.com. So without specifying domain, it will be available only at sub.example.com. If we want to make it available for the subdomains, we can specify like this. So we will have domain specified to our page. So this is same, right? But now this cookie will be available also on the subdomain. So there are two ways you can write it down. So you can have sub or dot sub, which basically means the same. That's why in next examples, you're gonna see this one. So we have cookie set value domain example.com or dot example.com. So I'm gonna use this this syntax over here. So number two, if we set domain to our domain, it will be available for that and subdomain. We can also set it to the main domain, right? Just to remind you, we were talking about sub.example.com. So this is the page we are working at. If we set it up to the main domain, it will basically make it available on the domain and all. Sorry, that should be actually example, right? Example.com and also all subdomains. And now few bad examples, so how not to use it. So example number 4, if we set it up to the top level domain like .com or .whatever, this will be simply ignored. It doesn't work like this. You cannot have cookie working like this. If you set it to another domain, right? So we are talking now we are working on example.com. This is our domain. If we set it to something else, it will be ignored. It doesn't work. And finally, example number 6, if we set it to different subdomain, look, please notice that here we have other example.com and our is sub.example.com. So if we set it to other example core or some other sub pages, it will basically ignore it as well. So that doesn't work. So I'm gonna put it in the comments in the original file, so you can just always refer to it, but you don't have to know it by heart. It's just like to have a proper understanding that you can decide which pages can access the cookie, regardless whether they are before we are doing the subdomains or after we are using path. And finally, 2 last setups. One is secure. So basically that means that secure, if we add this option to the our cookie, it will make sure that it will be sent only over encrypted requests like HTTPS protocol. So this is for the security reasons that will help you to save from man-in-the-middle attack. And if we do HTTP only, this is something which you use when we are doing the server-side rendering and we want to use some cookie only on the server side. That means if we use HTTP only option, that means basically that we will not be able to use this or access this from JavaScript, right? So this is only server, so we won't be able to get access to it using document.cookie. This cookie will be not visible for JavaScript. Okay, so finally, as I promised, I'm going to show you how to make use of this function and all these cookies which we just learned. So I've prepared some div over here. So this is simple div. Imagine it's some modal pop-up, whatever you want to call it, with some styles here. So we have some border and we have set display to none. So we don't want to see it by default. There is some important information and we want to have some button. So I don't know, we want to user to agree to use cookies or to, we want to take his consent, or we want to show him discount code and whatever. That could be the X icon to close this model. That could be anything you can think of. Basically, what we want to make sure is that once user click on it, it will never show again. Okay, so this is our HTML for it. I wrote two small functions over here. So first is don't show, right? So once we click on it, that's going to invoke this function. What we want to do, we want to set cookie don't show and set it to true. And we want to be valid for 365 days. It can be longer if you want. I think 1 year is enough. And we want to make sure that this will disappear. So we're going to set style to none. Get element by ID. So we use the ID of the div and then we set it the visibility to none. And here, on the page load, we want to check if this cookie exists, and if it doesn't, we want to change this visibility to block. So by default, we will check if there is this cookie set. So now, as you can see, there is no cookie with the name don't show, right? So the cookie doesn't exist, so we are making this div visible. What happens now, if I'm going to click on it, it will disappear because we put it to none. We added cookie. So if I'm going to refresh the page now, you can see that this don't show is set to true. And as a result, it's not showing up again, right? If we remove the cookie manually, you will see that on the next page, reload, on the next page, enter ends, we're going to show it again. And then again, if we're going to click here, it's going to disappear. Okay, thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to check how to use different options to store data in a web browser like a local storage, check our channel because you're going to find much more tutorials like this one. As I mentioned in the very beginning, don't only watch this tutorial, make sure to write your code on your own, make sure to make use of it, and keep coding because this is what makes you a better developer. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.